The Kutasich is Chelek Chav Dalid V'Eschanon Aleph Lili Nishmas Reb Yosef ben Yamin ben Reb Menashe Kaltman. Today we are going to discuss the word V'Eschanon and what are the various different ways that one can approach the Eibishter to daven or to ask for something. Is it better to ask for something that we believe we earned or something that we did not earn? And what is the advantage in each of those ways? Very, very fascinating discussion. After Aschalas HaSeder V'Eschanon Al Hashem, werden gebracht in Sifri Tzvei Deis, the beginning of the Seder V'Eschanon Al Hashem, where Moshe asks of Hashem to allow him to go into Eretz Yisrael. The Sifri brings two opinions on the words V'Eschanon. Rashi brings these two opinions as well. Aleph as V'Eschanon is from Lashon Chinam. Number one, that the word V'Eschanon is from the word free or undeserved. Das heißt, Moshe Rabbeinu hat gebeten beim Eibishten, soll ihm lassen reingehen in Eretz Yisrael als Matnas Chinam, meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu requests of Hashem to allow him into Eretz Yisrael as an undeserved gift, as a free gift. Says the Sifri that even though certain tzaddikim such as Moshe Rabbeinu or David the Melech had good deeds, had ma'asim tovim for which to ask for what they asked for Hashem from, nevertheless, rather than depend on their ma'asim tovim, instead they asked chinam, they asked for free, they asked from the Eibishter to give it not in the merit of their good deeds. Then there's a second pirush in the Sifri, and in Rashi, as V'Eschanon is einer from the Asar L'Sheina Shel Tefillah, that V'Eschanon is one of the words. The Sifri says that there's 10 different words in the Chumash, throughout the Chumash, that could mean davening, that could mean prayer. One of them is the word V'Eschanon or Tachanunim, and here V'Eschanon is just one of the various different expressions for Tefillah. In Medrash Rabbah, the Medrash Rabbah also brings these two ideas, these two concepts. As V'Eschanon is Aleph on the Asar L'Sheina Shel Tefillah, Beis das is Miloshen Matnas Chinam. That V'Eschanon on the one hand is an expression of prayer. On the other hand, it comes from the word Chinam, which means asking for a gift, for a free gift. So the Medrash also brings both these concepts, aber nit al tzvei deis. However, the Medrash does not bring it as two separate opinions, nor als ein und derselber pirush, brings it as one explanation, von demselben Mad Amar, from the same person. And here is a quote from the Medrash, where we see how the Medrash blends together these two ideas into one explanation. Rabbi Yochanan said, Tefillah has 10 different words that are expressions or synonyms for prayer. And Rabbi Yochanan lists 10 of them. And the last one, the 10th, v'tachanunim, is the word tachanunim. The chsiv and the raya is v'eschanan el Hashem. The Moshe uses as v'eschanan, I prayed, I entreated Hashem. So we see that the tachanunim is a form of tefillah. And all 10, Moshe uses the term tachanunim to daven to Hashem over here to allow him into Eretz Yisrael. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, and then you see it's underlined that the same Rabbi Yochanan says, Mikanat alamet, from here you learn she'ein leberia klum eitzel beire, that a creation has nothing by Hashem. Meaning to say Hashem owes us nothing. And the proof is that Moshe approaches Hashem with tachanunim. If Moshe had good deeds in his account, so to speak, the Moshe wouldn't have to come tachanunim, which the Rebbe is understanding the Medrash here to mean that he's asking in a way of a plea, in a way that he has no ma'asim tovim to ask for. From the fact that Moshe uses tachanunim, says the Rebbe, as the lashon tachanunim v'eschanon, but sitzich ifat tefillah bakosha was mebebetur matnas chinam. From the fact that the Yochanan is saying that ein leberia klum eitzel beire, that Hashem owes us nothing, means to say that the word tachanunim, though it is one of the lashonos of tefillah, it is a type of tefillah where you're asking Hashem to give you something even if you don't deserve it. Because you have nothing to ask for. And to strengthen this point, that though it is a tefillah, b'lashon tachanunim means a matnas chinam, The Rebbe continues to the Medrash, to bring the Medrash from Rabbi Levi. And in order 5, the Rebbe points out from the fact that it says Omer Rabbi Levi and not Rabbi Levi Omer. This implies that Rabbi Levi is agreeing to Rabbi Yochanan, not arguing with him. Rabbi Levi says, Lama leba Moshe ele b'lashon tachanunim. Why did Moshe actually use the term tachanunim? And he answered, this is a reference to what the Medrash is saying, that when Hashem said, V'chanoisi es asher achen, after the Chet HaEgel, V'chanoisi, I will be graceful to he who I want to be graceful to. So the Medrash explains that Hashem said to Moshe that sometimes a person should, that when a person davens for their schusim because they have merits, at times if a person doesn't have any merits, he could ask that I should do it for him, matnas chinam, and v'chanoisi, I will do with a matnas chinam. So therefore Moshe says here, I'm turning to the Eibishter, I'm the one who needs a matnas chinam. I'm asking for Hashem to do for me, even if it's free, even if I may not deserve it. So from all of this together, we see that Rabbi Yochanan is referring to a lashon of matnas chinam, but within the context of tachanunim, which is in the context of tefillah. So what the Medrash is doing here is bringing these two ideas, chinam and tefillah, and merging them together. So you have the opinion of you have the Sifri that has two separate opinions. One is that the eschanon means chinam, and two that eschanon means tefillah. And the end of the opinion of the Medrash that V'eschanon means both a tefillah that is asking for a chinam for something that's undeserved. Darfon verstehen. So the Rebbe presents this question: Was is the svaras machlekes zwischen Sifri and Medrash? What is the reasoning, the logic behind this argument? See, does that in zwei pirush mit ein pirush? Whether there's two separate opinions that V'eschanon means either chinam or tefillah, or that the Medrash says that it's one pirush that V'eschanon means both tefillah and chinam. So in Sif Beis we bring the Mefarshim and Amaz ben Achilles and the Tzvei and Sifri. The Mefarshim that explain the Sifri, because the Sifri brought two opinions. So what's the difference between the two opinions? Say the Mefarshim. Late Neshten Pirush as V'eschanon is from Lashon Matnas Chinam. The first opinion that says, the first explanation that says the V'eschanon is from the word Chinam, is as gleich wie svot gestanden V'eschanem. It's as if it would have said the word V'eschanem or V'eschinam. I am the Chinam. I'm asking Chinam. And at gebeten the Meivishten losses matnas chinam, he's asking of Hashem to give him something that he doesn't deserve. Und der Fall ist nicht von der L'shene shel tefillah, and it's not one of the expressions of davening. In all the 10, you don't find anywhere that the term chinam is the word of tefillah. Because v'eschanim means I'm asking for something for free. The focus is on the free, not on the asking, and therefore, according to this opinion, v'eschanim is not about praying. It's not about davening for something. V'eschanim is asking for something for free, for a matana, for a gift. But it's whereas, according to the second Pirush in the Sifri, that V'eschanan is one of the expressions of Tefillah, is V'eschanan a lashon from Tchinim v'Tachanunim. So then the word V'eschanan means pleading or entreating from Hashem. So there's a very major difference between these two opinions. Does V'eschanan mean tefillah or not? According to the first opinion of the Sifri, V'eschanon does not mean tefillah. According to the second opinion, V'eschanon does mean tefillah. So now, according to this, we can now apply this to the Medrash. As the idea von Medrash was bring beide Inyanim zusammen, that the Medrash that fuses these two ideas together is as afal pi as the word v'eschanan is nit miloshen chinam nor miloshen tachanunim, even though the shoydish of v'eschanan is not from the word chinam, it's actually from the word tachanunim, and therefore the Medrash does consider it to be a form of tefillah. Is aber der Teuchen von Tefillas Tachanunim as a better matnas chinam. But in the context of tefillah itself, it's possible for a person to ask something where he feels like he doesn't deserve it. He's asking for a chinam, but all within the context of tefillah. So, which means that according to these Mefarshim, the way the Rebbe applies it to the Machlokes Sifri and Medrash, the argument between the Sifri, the first opinion of the Sifri, and the Medrash is the word Va'eschanon a lashon of tefillah? According to the first, and not only is the word Va'eschanon a lashon of tefillah, when you're asking a matnas chinam, is it a lashon of tefillah? According to the Sifri, Va'eschanon means chinam, and therefore it's not a lashon of tefillah. And according to the Medrash, Va'eschanon is a lashon of tefillah that incorporates the idea of chinam within it. So now you're going to say very simple. 1 second. What's the difference? In both cases, Moshe is asking for a matnas chinam. So what does it mean that according to the Sifri, it is a lashon tefillah? According to the Medrash, according to the Sifri, it's not a lashon tefillah. According to the Medrash, it is lashon tefillah. If you're asking for chinam, what's the difference? What lashon it's coming from? At the end of the day, you're doing the same thing. You're turning to Hashem and you're asking Him to give you something that's chinam. We bald the silent and Sifri silent and Medrash is bepayot Moshe gevetna by maybe the matnas chinam. Since in the end, whether you're looking at the Sifri in the first Pirush or you're looking at the Medrash, Moshe was asking something of Hashem for free, undeserved, is in Vaspa state to take an aplukta. So what does this argument consist of? See, Moshe genusa loshem asot blois the minal fulchinum kedasa Sifri. Whether Moshe used an expression that is exclusively means free, means undeserved, and not a lashon of tefillah, as the Sifri says in the first Pirush, or the lashon shel tefillah. Not as a lashon was passing about the matnas chinam, or it is an expression of tefillah, but a tefillah that's being used when you're saying chinam. What is the background of this machlokes? If in the end they both agree that Moshe was asking for a matnas chinam, so the Rebbe is going to explain that the request is very different. If it's a lashon tefillah or if it's not a lashon shel tefillah, it's a very, very different thing. In order to do that, the Rebbe is going to introduce in Seif Gimel that there's two elements to davening. There's one element is the words that I'm saying, how I'm presenting my request. Same thing could be true even not in a tefillah. When a person is asking something from one person to the other person, there could be a million things going through his head, but then he prepares what he wants to say in a few words, and there's what he says. May not reflect entirely what he's thinking. And then there's what he's thinking. Why he is deserving, or why the Eibishter should fulfill this request. And the Rebbe is going to explain what kind of reasonings there could be. Let's take it one step at a time. The beer in them. When a person is davening to Hashem, asking of Hashem that Hashem should provide his necessities, there are two elements here. How it's being presented, the manner of the request. For example, is he pleading, as if to say, asking for something that he feels he may not deserve, or tviyah, he's demanding something. But the focus here is, how is he presenting his request? Beis, the second element is the siba. What reason does he think is there that Hashem should fulfill his request? Does kumtim? Maybe he believes that he's owed it. Or maybe he believes he's not owed it, but he's asking Hashem to do it anyway, to give it to him undeserved. So the two elements over here are the oifen versus the siba. The presentation versus the cause, the reason why Hashem should do this. And to explain this siba, the Rebbe explains as follows. Since the Eibishter created him, the Eibishter has an obligation, so to speak, to provide his necessities. As the Pasuk says, V'racham of kol ma'asav, of everything that the Eibishter created, he has mercy upon it. Especially if a person is a descendant of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, which makes him, as the Gemara says in Baba Metzia, B'nai Malachim, a prince. So he is owed, he deserves the meal of Shleima Malach, which was the greatest, most lavish feast. He deserves that and more. Because he's the child of kings. Most certainly, if this is a person who is observant of Torah mitzvahs, it says in the pasuk that if you'll follow in my statutes, I will give rain in its time, which means the Eibishter promises that if the Yidden keep Torah mitzvahs, he's going to provide for them. So it is yes leimar. And therefore we can say, as euch der inyan tefillah, wie sie darf sein milchatchila al piteras emes, is weil kommt. So according to this, it seems, and this is a very fundamental element to this entire sikha, that the idea of tefillah is when a person approaches the Eibishter because he deserves it. Either because he did something to deserve it, or because he's a Yid, or because he's a creation of Hashem. But there's a pre-existing relationship between the Eibishter and the Yid, and because of that, the Yid deserves Hashem's provisions, Hashem's sustenance. Let's stay on this point for a moment and ask this question. If the person deserves it, and especially if it's because of his own good deeds, so why you have to daven for it? If Hashem owes it to you, then let Hashem provide without you coming and begging for it. First of all, the person gets more. When the person davens for it, then he gets more, and with a shining countenance, meaning to say, with greater abundance. Then, if he would get it just because he's being rewarded, he's owed for what he did. So in addition to that, is Yodua. It's well known. As afilu das was the Eibishter git b'teres schar, even those things that the Eibishter is giving to us as a reward, is es nit beoifen as the Eibishter is mechuyev das zu geben. Still doesn't mean that the Eibishter is obligated to give it to us. In this world, if you're getting a reward, it means you did something to deserve it. Now the person who you did it for owes you something in return. But the Eibishter doesn't work like that. The Eibishter, even though the Eibishter promises to give something, and therefore the person deserves it for what he did, nevertheless, it cannot be that the Eibishter is obligated to do so. In the order, the Rebbe brings that the whole concept of that through the efforts of the person below, he brings down energy from above. Even that whole concept is because that's what the Eibishter wanted. The whole fact that the Eibishter has to pay us back for something that we deserve is in itself part of the Eibishter's desire, and therefore part of the Eibishter's chesed. As the Rebbe continues in the Sikha, V'yishteit, to you, Hashem, there is kindness when you repay each person according to their deeds. The fact that the Eibishter repays each person for their deeds, even when a person does good deeds and the Eibishter reciprocate, not even when the Eibishter, when a person does something good and the Eibishter reciprocates for their deeds, he's a chesed from the Eibishter. That in itself is a kindness of Hashem. Hashem decided that he's going to pay back a person for what he did. So therefore, that's why we daven for it, because we want to access the chesed of the Eibishter, that he should repay us for our maisim. And therefore, and therefore we have to daven to Hashem. Because we need to awaken the chesed of Hashem to get even that which we deserve. And we can't demand it by the Eibishter. Because even though we deserve it, nevertheless, the fact that the Eibishter is giving it to us is a chesed. So we can't demand it. So what happens is, it's owed to us, but nevertheless, we ask Hashem to give it to us out of his kindness, as if we didn't deserve it. That as Chazal say, a person should not depend their prayer, their davening, on their own merits. Because even if Hashem does fulfill his request and does it because of his good deeds, it's still not appropriate to say, Hashem, do it in my own merit. Do it in the merit of my good deeds. That's not the way we daven. So in Sif Gimel, we accomplished a couple of things. Number one, we learned this paradox. With, on the one hand, we are owed certain things. We are deserving of Hashem's kindness, but nevertheless, it's still a kindness of Hashem. So on the one hand, we can think to ourselves that it's owed to us. On the other hand, we have to realize that whatever we get is a chesed Hashem, and the Chazal tell us not to ask for Hashem b'schus atzmai. But if we go back to the beginning of Seif Gimel, what this was trying to teach us was that when a person davens to Hashem, there's what he says to Hashem, please give me this, or please do this, etc. And what's going through his head, why should Hashem give it to me? And once we understand this concept, that there's oifen and there's siba, to use the words of the Rebbe, there's oifen meaning how I present my prayer, and siba, the reason that I believe Hashem should fulfill that prayer, we'll understand the difference between the Sifri and the Medrash. Und das ist der Chilik zwischen dem Sifri und dem Medrash. So this is the difference between the Sifri, the first Pirush of the Sifri, and the Medrash. The two different approaches, that of the Sifri in the first Pirush versus the Medrash, how to connect v'eschanon with the word matnas chinam. That according to the Sifri, v'eschanon means chinam and not tefillah. And according to this medrash, v'eschanon means tefillah, that is beloshen shel chinam. It's actually two different ways in how you ask for a matnas chinam. Late in medrash is v'eschanon matnas chinam blois mitar dem oifen abakasha. According to the medrash, that v'eschanon means that you're asking for chinam. It's only describing the presentation of the request. For example, it says in the pasuk, "Tachanunim yedaber rosh." A pauper speaks in a more pleading manner. And a wealthy person responds or asks with arrogance. So in other words, V'eschanon is saying that there is a more pleading manner in which to present a request. Someone who is in a state of humility and not arrogant is the way he phrases his request, his prayer, is in a way that I don't really deserve it. I'm asking for it even though I don't deserve it. This is very, very important. He knows he has good deeds. He knows he deserves this. The siba, ultimately, that he's asking for it is because Hashem owes it to him. But when he asks it of Hashem, the way he says it out is as a matnas chinam. And therefore the wording used in the medrash is, it's an expression of tachanunim. The idea of the tachanunim is being heard in the wording, in the presentation of the davening, which means in this case the siba here would be that he feels he deserves it, he has ma'asim tovim. But the oifen, the presentation of the davening is b'lashon tachanunim, b'lashon v'eschanon, Eibishter, give it to me, please, even undeserved. So the medrash is coming from a perspective where the person believes, the person realizes that he deserves this. But when he says it out to Hashem, he says it in a manner of tachanunim, in a manner of chinam. Mashenkin in Sifri, whereas according to the Sifri, is der inyan von matnas chinam nit nur beloshen tefillah. The fact that he's asking for a chinam is not just in the words of how he's presenting, how he's phrasing the davening, nor even in his own feelings. He's asking for something free because he believes that he doesn't deserve it. He feels he doesn't have the merits with which the Eibishter should fulfill his request, and therefore he's asking Hashem something undeserved. So this is two totally different attitudes. The medrash is coming from an attitude that the person really deserves it, and that's why he could daven. He has something on which to base his davening. It's just because of his humility, he says to Hashem, "Give it to me for chinam." The Sifri is talking about someone that his attitude is, I don't deserve anything. He can't daven. There's nothing to daven for. He's only asking for a matana. He's only asking for a gift. Please give me a free gift. And that's why the Sifri says that v'eschanon comes from the expression of a free gift. And it's not an expression of davening. As we said earlier, the davening is when there is some schusim involved. When you're coming straight from the place of matana, that's not the gedder of tefillah. Is the gedder from tefillah. Because if you're asking something without a prior relationship, you're coming straight from a place, I want chinam, I don't deserve it, but I want it chinam anyway. That's not tefillah. That's asking for a matana. That's not a tefillah. So that's the difference between the Sifri and the Medrash. The Medrash saying Moshe Rabbeinu came and said to the Eibishter, I might believe that I deserve it, but it doesn't matter. He didn't say any of these words. This was going through his head, according to the Medrash. He approached the Eibishter b'loshen tachanunim. He asked Hashem as if he was undeserving. Whereas, according to the Sifri is saying that Moshe believed that he was undeserving. He was not banking on any of his previous ma'asim tovim, and he said to the Eibishter, I want a matana, a matnas chinam. That's the difference between the Sifri and the Medrash as to the attitude of the person in his davening. So right away the Rebbe clarifies, what do you mean Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, I have no schusim? How could Moshe Rabbeinu come to the Eibishter and believe Bahar Gashosli, according to the Sifri, that he has no Maisim Tevim? Moshe Rabbeinu certainly knows, remembers, that he's the one who brought the Torah down from Har Sinai, and many other things that he did for the Yidden. Certainly he knows, he realizes that he has plenty of good deeds. But nevertheless, Moshe's humility was so intense, he believed that he did not deserve anything for it. When he comes to the Eibishter for this request, he comes from a place that he believes that he is owed nothing, and therefore he can't daven. He can't come from the perspective of tefillah, because he's owed nothing. He comes specifically from the perspective of matnas, solely from the perspective of matnas chinam. As was the well-known explanation of the pasuk, that Moshe was the most humble man from all of the people on the face of this earth. Despite the fact that Moshe knew that he had many great qualities in comparison to every other person. Nevertheless, he was so humble because he believed that this was not his own accomplishment. But everything that he accomplished was a gift from above. On the contrary, then had another person had these same qualities and these same strengths, the other person would have been better than him, and therefore he was very humble about it. He didn't feel that he had accomplished anything on his own, and therefore all of his accomplishments did not give him the belief that he was deserving of this request, and therefore he didn't come from the perspective of tefillah, he came from the perspective of chinam. And based on this, we can actually see this, that both the Sifri and the Medrash use different phrases to speak about this concept of chinam, and it fits now very beautifully with this explanation that we just gave between the Medrash and the Sifri. In Medrash is mudgish as ein leber yeklum eitzel boirei. The Medrash says that nobody has anything by the Creator. By Hashem, this work is not significant. The Medrash is saying that the person believes that he has Maisim Tovim. Just when he comes before Hashem, he asks for Chinam anyway, because he believes that what he's done, as far as the Eibishter is concerned, is not enough. So therefore, he comes b'loshen tachanunim. But in his own right, he knows he has Maisim Tovim. So that's why the Medrash emphasizes Eitzel Boiroi, that by Hashem it's not Teifes Makim. Shaken in Sifri's Mevuras, Hoy Yechelim Litlis Mamasema Tovim. But the Bikshu Min HaMakim Shitin Lemelachinam, and the Sifri says that they could have banked on their good deeds, but they did not ask of Hashem anything other than free. But das is madgish nitzi masema tevim san tevis makom ha'mebishtin. Here you don't see that their good deeds are insignificant to Hashem, because he says they could have used it. Nor the anivus from tzaddikim. What you see over here is their humility, as their maisim tevim and as they goof in the tevis makom. That even though they had maisim tevim, but in their own minds, it's not significant enough. Because they betten by mebishn blois bitur matnas chinam, and because of that, they're asking Hashem only a matnas chinam and not loshen tachanunim. That's a tefillah that is phrased as a request for chinam. So the way the Medrash says Eitzel Boiroi versus the way the Sifri says, we see this same concept, that according to the Medrash, the person believes that he is deserving. It's just the way he presents it to Hashem is he's asking for chinam, versus according to the Sifri, the person, in this case Moshe Rabbeinu, believes that he is undeserving, and therefore rather than take the route of tefillah, he takes the route of matnas chinam exclusively. Now we understand the basic thing. From here and on, the Rebbe is going to continue to explain these two approaches through various different pirushim and different elements that are negeah to this inyan. But this is the underlying theme. The Rebbe started out asking, what's the difference between the Sifri and the Medrash? The Rebbe explained that according to the Sifri, V'es Chanon is a Lashon Tefillah, is Lashon Chinam, not a Lashon Tefillah, according to the first Pirush in Sifri, whereas according to the Medrash, V'es Chanon is a Lashon Tefillah. It's just being asked, B'Lashon Tachanunim, chinam. So the question was, what's the difference of in both cases is chinam? The difference is the person's perspective. Does the person believe that he has what to ask for, and he's just out of his humility asking, out of his bittul asking, or does the person believe that he has no right to ask and nothing to bank on, and the only thing he's asking for is chinam? And that's the approach of the Sifri, that v'eschanon is a lashon of chinam and not a lashon of tefillah, because Moshe was at a point that tefillah wouldn't have worked. He had nothing to come to the table with in his mind, and the only thing he could ask for is a matnas chinam. Leit dem Bier in die zwei Efanim, wie zu verstehen Tfilas Moshe v'eschanon el Hashem. According to this explanation, in the two different approaches to understand Moshe's tefillah, is euch musber der Teichen achilik zwischen die zwei Perushim. We can also understand the difference between the two explanations that Rashi brings in the Emphasis von Eibishter with regards to the answer of the Eibishter. Ravloch. That Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hashem said, "Vayemer Hashem Elai, Rav Loch, it's enough. Al Toisef Taber Elai B'Devar. Don't speak to me anymore about this." So Rashi brings two pirushim, and you'll see, and Rabbi points out in R 36 that the two pirushim in Rashi are consistent with the two it's in the same order as the two pirushim in Rashi here, which the first pirush is V'eschanan is Melashon Chinam, the second pirush is V'eschanan is Melashon Tefillah, which is much more similar to the pirush HaMedrash. So Rashi brings two pirushim. Aleph, Shelo Yemru, that Rav Loch is from the word Rav, master. Shelo Yemru Harav Kama Koshev Talmid Kama Sarvanu Maftzir. That stop davening, stop talking about this, so people shouldn't say how cruel, how hard is the teacher, and how stubborn is the student. Beis Rashi means the second pirush Rav Loch as in a lot. Harbe mizeh shamar lecha, much more than this is reserved for you. Rav Toiv Atzafon Loch, there's a lot of good that's being kept for you. So Hashem is telling Moshe to stop davening, stop asking, either because it's not gonna end good. It's gonna look like we're like the Rav is very cruel, like the Talmud is very stubborn, or Hashem gives him a carrot. Hashem says, listen, there's good stuff waiting for you. Maybe not now, maybe not this, but there's good stuff. There is a reward waiting for you. So now let's go back to the Sifri in the Medrash. This is going to work according to the two pirushim in V'eschanon. According to the Sifri, that Moshe is asking a totally undeserved, asking a matane. Hashem says, Moshe, you have to stop asking. Because people are going to say things. Because if not for that, because he's asking you for matnas chinam, there's no limit to how many times he's going to ask. When a person is coming and in his own mind, at least he's coming because of his own schusim, then once his schusim run out, once he realizes that his schusim are not going to work, he's going to stop davening. There's a limit because it's based on his own deeds. But in the case of the first pshat in the Sifri, that the person is asking matnas chinam mamish, he's not basing it on anything. So there's nothing that's going to stop him at any point from stopping from davening. He's going to keep on asking and asking. So Hashem says you have to stop asking, period. He doesn't say I'm going to give you something for it. He says you have to stop asking, because since he's coming from the perspective that he is asking for a matnas chinam mamish, there's no end to the requests. But according to the Pirush, that V'eschanon is a form of tefillah, which is based ultimately on the merits of the person davening. Is it Emphasis von Eibishter? So the Eibishter says, Harbi mizah shorben lecha, Rav teva tzafon lech, there's schar for dynamite and teva harbi mizah. You're going to get a much greater reward than this. But there is reward for you, because since you're coming from a place of tefillah, and therefore there are zechuyos, there are merits, don't worry, you'll get rewarded. He doesn't tell him stop asking. He says, I'm going to answer your tefillah, but in a different way. Because since he's coming from a perspective of tefillah, which means that there are schusim, there's merits, there has to be a reciprocation for that. So we see in the way Rashi teaches Rav Loch, you see a hemshich, you see a theme that according to one pshat in Rashi, Moshe is asking him matnas chinam mamish, and therefore the only way to stop him is to say, Moshe, please stop asking. And according to the second pshat in Rashi, which is consistent with the Pirush HaMedrash, that V'eschanon is a form of tefillah, which means he's coming from a perspective of ma'asim tovim, even though it may not be presented that way, but he's coming from a place of his ma'asim tovim, and therefore Hashem says, I'll pay you back. In Sivav, the Rebbe is going to say, what's the Yesod Machlekes? Ask. I'm going to explain what is the foundation of this Machlekes. Why does the Sifri say that Moshe was asking Matnas China? Why wouldn't he ask for? Why wouldn't he be mispalel? Why couldn't Moshe, according to the Sifri, Moshe go the route of tefillah? Why does the Sifri say that Moshe is coming from a place of Matnas China, that there's no tefillah involved? He's just asking for a free gift, versus the Medrash that says that there was a tefillah. But daarvoor gaan we verstaan. Was is voor de taam die je zegt van de plukte tussen Sifri Medrash? What ultimately is this the foundation of this machlekes? From the tefillas Moshe is blazed in lashon tefillah kedas medrash. Whether v'eschanan is only the expression, how he's presenting it, other valid be'em is gehalten as im kumtak in it, or like the Sifri that Moshe believed truly that he didn't deserve it, und der Vater nicht gekent not lashon tefillah, and therefore he couldn't use the lashon of tefillah nor blois beten but trumat naschinam. The only thing he could do is ask of Hashem for a free gift kedas Sifri. So in order to explain this, we have to first introduce another detail. Upon Moshe Rabbeinu there was a decree that he's not going to enter into Eretz Yisrael. The fact it says right at the beginning of Parshas V'eschanan that after Moshe Rabbeinu was victorious over the lands of Sichon and Og, and then Sichon and Og were given to God, Shevet God and Shevet Reuven, and Chassi Shevet HaManashe, which is technically an extension of Eretz Yisrael, Moshe said maybe the neder was released, and maybe I could go into Eretz Yisrael. That only applies with regards to the promise that Hashem made. As Moshe is only to in Eretz Yisrael, that Moshe cannot go into Eretz Yisrael. Is an Artzazagin. With regards to the Shvua, there was room to say, since the halacha is that a neder, that part of it was released, part of it was undone. Huter kulay, this undoes the entire neder. Is about to go into Shvua. So Moshe thought maybe the Shvua that Hashem made became batal, and now there's no more shvua that Hashem could go, that Moshe cannot go to Eretz Yisrael. Aber das nimmt nicht ab die etzem Geseide Weinisch. That didn't yet undo the actual decree, as was only the reingehen in Eretz Yisrael. Was der Fahr hat erst nachdem wie getracht zum Huter neder mispalel ben lakas baruch Hu abzunehmen das was nichts Geseide, which is why Moshe is still davening. If Moshe thought that the Geseide was over, there would be no need to daven. He wouldn't have to daven to Hashem, v'eschanan el Hashem, because the Geseide is over. So the Rebbe clarifies. Moshe thought the neder was over, the promise part was over, but the Geseide was still there. So this is the introduction. That Moshe Rabbeinu knew that there was a gezeda, a decree that he cannot go into Eretz Yisrael, and that decree had not yet been undone. So now that we understand that there's a gzeira against Moshe, as we can answer as the pluk tzavishim dem Sifri u Medrash. This argument between the Sifri and Medrash is totally in the Tzvei Deis is dependent on is based on the two opinions. Tefillah helped euch lacher gzar din or the koydem gzar din. Does a tefillah help? Can a tefillah be beneficial even after the decree was made? Or if there's a gzeira milamayla, Hashem made a decree, and then a person goes and davens, can that davening help even though the gzeira was already made? The Medrash halt v'dideya as tefillah helped euch lacher gzar din. The Medrash holds like the opinion that tefillah, that prayer works even after the gzar din was made. The Rebbe points out in the Ha'ara that in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who is also the Baal Hadeya in the Baal HaMemre in the Medrash, also Rabbi Yochanan. So the opinion in the Medrash that Moshe was davening, he wasn't just coming b'turchinam, he was davening, is because the Medrash holds that tefillah works even after Gzar Din. Und der Fahrrad Moshe mispalel ben lakas baruch Hu mit einem von the asar l'sheinu shel tefillah. And therefore, because tefillah could still work, Moshe approaches Hashem with a form of davening. But within the various different expressions of davening, he chose tachanunim. Fine, but he still felt tefillah could work because, according to this opinion, tefillah works even after the gzar din. Whereas the Sifri, in the first opinion of the Sifri, holds that tefillah only works before the gzar din. So therefore, had Moshe approached Hashem in the context of tefillah, it wouldn't have worked because the gzar din was done already. Now Moshe had gebeten, and therefore Moshe has no choice. The only way Moshe could approach Hashem is for a free gift, because tefillah does not work anymore, because the gzar din was already made. So this helps us to understand very, very strongly this machlokes. It's not stam they're arguing in the types of the word v'eschanon. They're arguing a major thing. Could Moshe have even used tefillah here? According to this video, tefillah would have never worked because it was lachar gzar din. Whereas according to the Medrash, tefillah could still work because tefillah works even after a gzar din. In Siv Zayin, the Rebbe is going to take us to another Inyan in Gemara, where again we see the concept that through tefillah, something that is built into nature can change, but there are two approaches that will be very similar to the approach of the Sifri and the Medrash as we had here. In this case, the two approaches are Bavli and Yerushalmi. Shleimar, as al derech zeh is ichti asbar in the machlekes which Bavli Yerushalmi, very similar. We can explain the machlekes to the Bavli and Yerushalmi in the Maimon HaMishnah, in the teaching of the Mishnah in Brachas Perek Tes, as a tefillah if aisha mu'beres, that someone who davens for a pregnant woman, sheteilet ishti zachar, that the child should be a male. Harezu tefillah shav. This is a tefillah shav. So the Mishnah doesn't say at what point that is. The Mishnah just says that if somebody davens, a woman is pregnant, and a person davens, let's say it's his wife, and he davens that his wife that this baby that she's carrying should be a baby boy. This is a tefillah shav. So it's a prayer in vain. According to the Bavli, this begins after 40 days. When the child is formed by 40 days, at this point, the gender of the child is formed already, and therefore from this point and on, says the Bavli, davening for the gender of the child is a prayer in vain. According to the Yerushalmi, this Mishnah is talking about the woman when she is on the birthing table, which means when she is ready to deliver the baby. But all the 9 months until the point of delivery, according to the Yerushalmi, it does help, or it can help, when a person davens to change the gender of the baby from a nekeva to a zachar, from a female to a male. When Leit Nacham Adamar, there's even an opinion in Bereshis Rabbi, in the Medrash, that even when the woman is on the delivery table, the birthing table, you could still daven and the gender could still change. This opinion is in Bereshis Rabbi. So you have a machlekes here, basically. Bavli and Yerushalmi. Bavli holds that from the 40th day, 41st day, and on, there's no value in davening to change the gender. According to the Yerushalmi, you could still daven, and it could still, and the davening could still work. Otherwise, it would be a tefillah shav. The fact that it's not a tefillah shav means that it could still work. So the Rebbe explains what is the machlekes between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. Mitzad Bavli was Eifen Alimud in Talmud Bavli is Miderach Malmata Lamayla. According to the Bavli, which the learning style in the Bavli goes from below to above, meaning to say that it is the person below that has to work through the learning to understand it. There are many questions and answers, etc. And you have to use the person's efforts in order to reach the conclusion. So when the Bavli discusses davening, it's discussing a davening that is limited according to the ramifications and the limitations of the person davening. And since naturally speaking, the fetus cannot change from being a female to a male once the 40 days have passed, it's a prayer in vain. The Bavli is coming from the natural perspective. Just like we said before, similar to what we said before, that once there's a gzeda, there's a gzeda. Once Teva formed the baby into a certain gender, davening, from the perspective of nature, nothing's going to change. And this helps us understand what the Gemara in the Bavli says, that by Dina, it did help even after 40 days, as the story goes. That Dina, it says, Dina Yolda Gamhi. So the Gemara explains, and Ashi brings it, that Dina realized that she had six sons, and Bila and Zilpah had 2 each, is 10, and Rachel had Yosef, that was 11. If she would have a boy, then that would mean that Rachel would have less children than the Shvachis, than the maidservants. So therefore she davened that she should not have a boy, so Rachel should at least have 2 sons, at least the same amount as Bila and Zilpah. And miraculously, it changed in the Kevel and the Zachar. So that's what the Gemara says. A darkness ben Maisinissim. Over there was a miracle. Since Leah was had experience in miraculous things. The Dibur is by ear cannot feel it. So Leah was able to create a miracle, to daven for a miracle that would change the gender of her child. But anybody else that's not a Malumad Benisim, anybody else that is approaching this from the perspective of Teva, the gender doesn't change. And therefore, if you're going to daven for it to change, it's a tefillah shav. But from the perspective of the Talmud Yerushalmi, which the learning of Yerushalmi is not so much yegi, it's not so much based on toil of the person, but rather there's more clarity, it's more straightforward, it comes as a gift from above. Is eich da in tefillah derech matnas chinam was hat nit kein hagbolis. Then you have within tefillah, you have a matnas chinam in the tefillah, and that has no limitations. And therefore, even while she is on the birthing table, the gender can change to the very last minute. The gender can change. In other words, when you're coming from the perspective of the Bavli is coming from the perspective of the Mata, of the Teva, and therefore nothing can change. The Yerushalmi is coming from the perspective of Matana, and Matana is unlimited. We said before, Matana, the person can ask unlimited, the Eibishter can give unlimited, because it's not based on anything. It's not based on Schusim, so it's unlimited. So therefore, Teva is not in charge. The Eibishter is in charge. On the level of Teva is in charge. On the level of Matana is in charge. Yerushalmi is coming from the perspective of Matana, and therefore, even after the 40 days, the gender can change. So we see over here the difference between Tefillah and Matana. Sivches, the Rabbi is going to go to the Bir al Derech Chassidus. So we understand that there is a concept of tefillah, which tefillah on the one hand is the best way to go because it means you deserve it. It means you have something to bank on, and this is how we approach the Eibishter. On the other hand, there are some times that we have nothing to daven with, and therefore the only choice is matnas chinam. Those are the two approaches. Now and one is the Sifri, one is the Medrash. Now we're going to see how this works in the vernacular of Chassidus. The Bir in the Madarach Chassidus. The Alter Rebbe is mevayin in Lukatere the meaning from Ein V'Eschanan Elo Matnas Chinam. The Alter Rebbe explains in Lukatere what does it mean that V'Eschanan means a Matnas Chinam. As durch Knisasi La'aretz hat Moshe gewollt uftan, as bei Eden soll mehr sein als am Adrege, was es hecher von zu kennen, zu kommen zu ihr durch Havis and Yivroim. The Alter Rebbe explains that Moshe wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael, and thus to accomplish, to arrange that upon Yidden should shine from such a high level of godliness that is beyond reach by the avodah of the people below. In other words, generally speaking, the way it works is a Yid does an avodah below, and this earns him a godly light from above. Moshe wanted a godly light that is beyond what was earned by the work of the people below. To use the terms of Chassidus, usually through Isarusa de Latata, through an awakening from below, this brings down an Isarusa de La'ela. But that Isarusa de La'ela, that awakening from above, is limited to the Isarusa de Latata, to that which the person did below. Moshe wanted an Isarusa de La'ela that's higher than the Isarusa de La'ela that is triggered or caused by the Isarusa de Latata. And also the Lashon Matnas Chinam, as Alter Rebbe says, this is why we use the word Chinam. Chinam beloy mitzvahs. This is a reference to a Memer Chazal brought in Rashi when the Yidden says, "Zacharnu es hadaga ashenechav Mitzrayim chinam." We remember the fish that we ate in Mitzrayim for free. So the Gemara says, one second, it was for free. You were working hard for it. So the Gemara says, "Chinam in mitzvahs." Over there, we didn't have to work. We didn't have to work spiritually for it. That's what they were saying in the literal sense. Chassidus turns it around to L'mal Yusa. Amadregi versus L'mal Mechidas HaMitzvahs. What Moshe wanted was to bring down a level that's beyond mitzvahs. Chinam in a mitzvah, it's free, meaning to say it's higher than mitzvahs. Generally, a person does a mitzvah, and through that mitzvah, he brings down a godly light. But again, the godly light is going to be commensurate to the work that the person did. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted chinam. He wanted to draw down a godly light that's beyond the efforts invested by the person below, beyond the mitzvahs that were done. Weil Pisa ist verständig, so dass das Sefri als Leiten Pidus was Chanan Matnas Chinam is es nicht von der Asar L'Shen Shel Tefillah, and according to this, it makes a lot of sense that Vas Chanan is not a form of Tefillah. Tefillah is the whole concept of Tefillah is to bring along the below. Und therefore, if he wanted to accomplish that Hashem should fulfill his request, then he should be able to cross over into Eretz Yisrael. Which that would have been able to bring down this godly light. Sorry, I sang it wrong. Tefillah is based on the below. Und darüber, gedei zu peil sein, beim Eibischten, dem Bille, im Avukas, neber, nove Erde, was es wollt aufgetan, beim Iden, dem Gile, der Yisrusa de Leila. So if Moshe wants to do something on the level of Yisrusa de Leila, not Yisrusa de Latata, hat ich der Eifen Abakash auf dem Kimuzayim Einza. So therefore Moshe had to ask on that level. Beten nicht mit der Loschen Shal Tefillah, nur am Naschine Mamis, was es in ganz nicht verbunden mit Schuyes. So therefore Moshe had to present it that way. If Moshe wants to draw down an Yisrusa de Leila that's beyond the Yisrusa de Latata, he can't go the route of Tefillah, because Tefillah is all about the Yisrusa de Latata. And Moshe is trying to circumvent the Yisrusa de Latata. And therefore Moshe also has to ask his request in a form of Matnas Chinam that's not based on the below, not based on the Schuyos, but rather Chinam. So what the Sifri is saying makes a lot of sense. The Sifri is saying Moshe wants to bring down this very, very lofty light from above, and therefore the only way to go about that is to circumvent the approach of Tefillah and ask for a Matnas Chinam. Nevertheless, in Siftes, we're going to explain the opinion of the Medrash. The Medrash says the Veschanan is a form of Tefillah. And to understand this, we're going to go a little bit deeper into what Moshe wanted and what Moshe got and didn't get. We'll understand this by first a learning that Tzemach Tzedek's biur on that Likutei Torah. In the Likutei Torah's Mavor, as the Bakasha and Alf and Moshe, so the Likutei Torah says, the Alter Rebbe says in the Likutei Torah, that this request of Moshe, as a Zolzaim B'chinas Yisrus L'Leila Shel Malam Yisrus L'Tata, to draw down the godly light from above that is beyond the efforts of the below, is the Rinyan Torah. This is the idea of Torah. He wanted to draw down Torah. Because through learning Torah you can draw down from the level of Anoichi, which is the essence of Hashem, which is way beyond the work of the below. It comes down in the form of a gift. So that's what Moshe wanted. Moshe wanted the idea of Torah. That Torah, which is milamayla lamata, it draws down this extremely lofty light, and this is what should come down to the Yidden. So the Tzemach Tzedek asks, we didn't get back into the Medrash. We're still learning the Tzemach Tzedek. So why do we say that Moshe wasn't successful? We have Torah, and through Torah we're able to draw down this lofty light from above that's higher than the Yisrusa Latata. So Moshe was successful. Why do we go about thinking that Moshe didn't succeed? So the Tzemach Tzedek explains, as Bakashas Moshe is given as the Amshacha Sha'adei Torah, was kum b'derech matana v'sus l'lil l'kanal, so peil zayin l'mati in Welt. Moshe didn't just want to draw down this light from above, this lofty light. That wasn't enough. What Moshe wanted to do was to draw down this light, and it should have an impact on the physical world. But thus is the Yislins in a uftu from Tefillah l'gabe Torah. Normally, that is the advantage of Tefillah over Torah. Torah tutov b'ikar l'mayla in Elam Yisrael Yenim. Torah's impact is felt mostly in the spiritual worlds. And through prayer, through davening, we actually change creation. Either that the one who is ill should become healed, or that the rain should fall. We actually make a difference in the physical world. Because since tefillah is coming from the below, therefore its impact is felt in the below where the prayer is taking place. So generally speaking, that's the ma'ila of tefillah. That tefillah, because it's coming milamata, it has an impact on the mata. Moshe had gewalt uftan as echt die amshacha lemata so sein bederach Yisrus l'leila durch Torah. What Moshe wanted, that not only we should have the lofty light, the oir milamayla, but it should have an impact on the physical world as if it was through tefillah. Moshe wanted both. He wanted the ma'ila of Torah and the ma'ila of tefillah. Now let's go back to the Medrash. When the father the Medrash says, that's what the Medrash says, that it was both. It was both Tefillah and Matnas Chinam. While Moshe had given up in them chibur from Beid the Milas, Moshe wanted the fusion of both advantages. That even though the Amshacha from above is coming in a form of Yisrus de Leila, so the that it should come from the highest place, but at the same time it should be brought down into the lowest of spaces. Und der Rebbe ist euch sein Tefillah gewinnt bitte Sachen. And therefore, according to the Medrash, when Moshe davens, he incorporates both aspects. This gewinnt Allah shal Tefillah, it was a Tefillah, so that we should have the Maila of Mila Mata. Aber was in Yana is because of Matnas China, but what was he asking for? He was asking for a Matnas China, that's something that should come from above, that's beyond this world. So that explains the Shittas HaMedrash. The Sifri is saying that Moshe asked for Matnas Chinam because Moshe wanted to bring an Oyer Milamayla. And therefore he asked for Matnas Chinam, something that's higher than the Schuyos of the person davening, of the people below. The Medrash is talking about the fact that Moshe wanted that this godly, lofty light should come down all the way into this world, and therefore he needed to have both tefillah to affect the below, and also matnas chinam to bring the light from above, and therefore the Medrash says that Moshe had both aspects in his davening. Afal pikein and sif yud, afal pikein not Moshe has nit pelgrim mit tefillah. Nevertheless, Moshe was not successful. Well, the tachlis hakavana is as also kumen der chaveda, because the ultimate purpose, the ultimate goal is that everything that should come through the efforts of the below. Was der far chotches mit sadem was Moshe is nit rein in Eretz Yisrael is the knisa l'Eretz given durch Yeshua. So and therefore, ultimately, what Hashem wants more than anything else is the avodah, and therefore, ultimately, Moshe did not go into Eretz Yisrael. And because of that, the Knisa, the entry into Eretz Yisrael, was accomplished by Yeshua. Pnei Levana, which compared to Moshe Rabbeinu's, Moshe's Pnei Chama, Moshe is like the face, the countenance of the sun. Yeshua is the countenance of the moons. Sheyesh Bashinuyim, the moon waxes and wanes. Which is why it was possible for Galus to even occur, because under Yeshua's accomplishment, there was going to be ups and downs. Which would not have happened had the entry to Etzol been done by Moshe. Then it would have been an eternal redemption. It would not have been dependent on the Aveda of the Mata. If Moshe had come in, like we learned in the Sikha of Matis, that Moshe wanted to go in Dafka in order to be able to make a Geulush ein achrei Galus. In the end, it was Yeshua, and because of that, there was a Galus afterwards. There is a Galus afterwards. But nevertheless, even though ultimately it was Yeshua and there were Shinuyim and there is a Galus, is the Berdafke durch dem Farandi Meile von Avodah. But because it was Yeshua and because there's Yesh Bashinuyim, therefore it has the advantage of the Avodah. The Maisi Yodecha Tichseif, the Eibishter yearns for the work of your hands. Ultimately, when the Avodah is done properly, it ultimately draws down a light that's even higher than the light that Moshe would have drawn down. That was a matnas chinam. Avodah reaches ultimately even higher than that. So you have Isus the Tata the Leila. Then you have this Isus the Leila that's higher than the Isus the Tata. And then you have the which is matnas chinam. Then you have something higher than that, L'maisi Yadecha Tichseif, which is done through the Avodah of Yidden. But that's what is Galav and Lamata Begula Mitzvah Shlema. That we don't see today necessarily, but it will be revealed to us in this world with the Gula Mitzvah Shlema durch Mashiach Tzidkenu b'Meheira v'Yameinu Mamash, speedily in our days.